Welcome to Max's Models. I'm Max. Hey everybody, hope you had a wonderful day. I didn't get a lot of work done in the TARDIS today because we had things to do, but I did get out there and start working on that resin cockpit for the Corsair, and got all the one at a time. I put instrument decals in the instrument panel, make it look good, and it definitely is vastly superior in appearance and detail to the kit cockpit, but it's almost overly complicated. But then the Corsair is a pretty busy cockpit, so I was surprised it actually fit without too much argument. I haven't got the halves together, we're not that far, but I have started getting them inserted, and the test fittings show that I did have to trim some stuff down, as you expect. I'm not sure. I don't think this resin cockpit was actually intended for this particular Revell kit. I could be wrong, but I cut out the glare shield and everything, so I put the one that comes with it and a lot of other stuff. But it's actually starting to look a little bit like something. I made plenty of mistakes, but luckily once it's buried down in the airplane, you won't be able to tell. I also got a couple of coats of paint and some clear coat. I went to Hurricane Hobbies today and bought a bunch of paint. And now I've got the proper white to put the base coat on the helicopter. Then I clear coated it with lacquer after that gassed out. And I'm going to, tomorrow or the next day, I might give it a couple of days to harden. It's been really wet and rainy down here, so I may give it a couple extra days to harden before I try to mask it. Hopefully it won't peel up any of the paint. And then I did something a person really shouldn't do. I had some time alone in the car to start reading up, and having done those missiles and rockets lately, I got a little bit curious about them because Cold War missiles have always kind of confused me. But believe it or not, despite the madness, there actually is a sort of rhyme and reason to it. You primarily have, I would say, 4 types of missiles and rockets. You have anti-aircraft missiles, SAM, surface-to-air missiles, like the Nike Ajax that I just built. You have surface-to-surface missiles like the Lacrosse or the Little John or the Honest John, which actually are rockets, and I'll get to that in just a second. Then, of course, you have air-to-air missiles. I'm not really going to get into those. I think we all know those pretty well. And, of course, you have the ICBMs and IRBMs, the really big stuff, and the Titans and the Minutemen and the Thors. But there are so many missiles of that era that I was like, I got to get these things organized in my head, because it just doesn't make... Why were they working on so many different programs at the same time? It seems like there'd be overlap. And, oh, boy. You guys may recall we talked about the 1947 Key West Agreement, where the Air Force got this and the Army got that, and they decided who would have what. Well, apparently missiles and rockets hadn't really advanced to the point back then that they were covered. So the Army's attitude was, we can build any rockets or missiles we want. And real quick, and I know you guys probably already know this, but just to get it out of the way, and for those who don't, there sort of technically is a difference between a rocket and a missile, but there's also 2 definitions for missile. So let me cover that first. The original definition for a missile is anything thrown or launched through the air at a target. So an arrow is a missile, a spear is a missile, a rock is a missile if you throw it at somebody. In fact, when I was delivering pizzas in Virginia back in the 80s, someone threw a rock at my car. I told the police, they caught him, and he was charged with throwing missiles at an occupied vehicle. So, what do you know? Then, of course, there's missiles as we know them today. A missile, generally speaking, is defined as an aerial vehicle that is launched. They talk about the shape of the missile as we think of it. It can change its direction, flight, or home on a target, whereas a rocket is generally considered just a dumb free flight vehicle. You shoot it and it just goes. Now, of course, those are not absolutes. We say, oh, the moon rocket. Well, obviously that was very guided, but it didn't qualify as a missile because it had people in it. Remember, a missile is thrown at something. So that just adds a layer of confusion to it. So since there were people in the rocket and it wasn't being fired at a target, it's a rocket, not a missile, even though it's guided. See how it gets a little confusing? That's kind of a loose classification, but that's sort of what's generally accepted, although the terms are often used interchangeably. with that useless bit of stuff out of the way, let's think about this. The Army starts playing with guided munitions, missiles, during World War II. One of the first ones they played with, they couldn't get to work, was called the Private. Nobody makes a model of it. I'd never even heard of it before. But we've all heard of the Corporal, and some of us have heard of the Sergeant missile, and they were follow-ons. And these were surface-to-surface missiles. They're basically an extension of artillery, which is why the Army thought they should have them. And the Air Force was like, no. And they got into this big argument over the Army saying that these rockets and missiles we're using are just extensions of the field artillery, the modern field artillery. In fact, that's one of the reasons the Germans got so far ahead of us during World War II, is because the Versailles Treaty restricted their artillery, but it never said anything about rockets, so they pushed rocket technology. It's, it seemed like a great idea to not let them have artillery until they wound up inventing rockets. So the Air Force's attitude was, no. You're throwing nukes at the enemy, or even conventional ordnance. It's that belongs to us. It flies. It's ours. And there was redundancy and overlap, and both of them were designing anti-aircraft missiles. Back in the 50s, they were working on a missile system that could shoot down incoming missiles. This is back when cars had tail fins and didn't have seat belts. Yet they're trying to make this old vacuum tube and later transistor technology that could shoot down an incoming missile with a missile. I mean, man, you got to respect that. So what we know as the Nike Ajax was just called Nike. When they came up with the bigger Hercules, Nike Hercules, it was called Nike B. Then they came up with even bigger Nike Zeus, and it was called Nike 2. This didn't make any sense, so they came up with a common naming convention. They all had the Nike-style projectile warhead, so we're going to call them all Nikes, and we're going to give them very distinct names. Nike Ajax, Nike Hercules, Nike Zeus. That'll keep them straight. But that was just for the high-altitude stuff. For the low to medium-altitude stuff, they had a completely different optimized system called Hawk, which, from my understanding, the people worked on was actually pretty good and was used for a very long time. And we've all seen plenty of kit models of the Hawk. Probably the best known or one of the most popular Army surface-to-air missiles. But the Army also had surface-to-surface rockets and missiles, and they had both. Remember we talked about the Little John the other day. Well, that's a rocket. So is the Honest John. The Honest John, it's like artillery, point, shoot. And they couldn't be jammed because they were basically free flight. But then systems like the Lacrosse were supposed to be pinpoint accurate, so they were missiles because they had guidance. In fact, I found out why they call it Lacrosse. In Lacrosse, a common thing is the tactic is to pass the MacGuffin, whatever they call that thing, from one person to another who's closer to the goal, who then tries to go for the score. Well, the Lacrosse missile is fired like a dumb rocket by the launcher, but then as it gets downrange, a forward observer picks it up and then guides it to the target. So one person's passing it to another, so they called it Lacrosse. There's some useless knowledge that you cannot unlearn. But the Army was very heavily invested in the Honest John, the Pershing, the Redstone, the Jupiter, which was an updated version of the Redstone. And the Air Force is arguing, you're getting into our territory, and some of your missiles are so capable. And one other thing was the British needed an intermediate range ballistic missile. The Atlas is way too big. And I think the Air Force might have been concerned that they might wind up taking an Army missile like the Jupiter. But Thor, which is a program that had been apparently stopped and started and stopped, and they said, okay, let's make Thor. They made Thor. And that became the Air Force missile. And the Army and the Air Force, there was redundancy and overlap and arguments. And finally, the Secretary of Defense put his foot down and said, okay, the Army can have missiles with a range up to 200 miles. After that, it belongs to the Air Force. It did not stop the bickering, but it did give everybody a specific court to play in. The technology was constantly in a state of advancement. In fact, there were even turf battles, pretty big ones, inside the Air Force. General LeMay wanted more bombers. General Shriver was pushing for more missiles. He was saying that, no matter how high and fast your bomber goes, it's going to be able to be shot down by modern missiles. Plus the ICBMs coming online, the bomber's going to be made redundant, which, by the way, is why they killed the beautiful XB-70. It lost its mission. One of the reasons we never had much in the way of an anti-missile, despite the technical hurdles, which over time could have been overcome, in fact, eventually were, was simply because they realized there were so many ways to spoof missiles. Decoys and all kinds of reflective surfaces, making them hard to track. I mean, they realized that the range of an anti-missile missile, under perfect circumstances, it could knock it down when it was still out there, but they just realized we'll probably get saturated with dummies, and it'd be almost impossible to ferret out the real ones. There was a huge economic argument. The anti-ballistic missile systems were extremely expensive, and they came to the realization that just having everybody hide in bunkers was a lot cheaper and was going to save a lot more people, given the math they worked out. I was reading this stuff, my jaw was dropping up, and I was like, what? And now my Cold War missile curiosity's gotten piqued. I went and grabbed the Honest John and the Bloodhound missile out of the stash, so they're next on the table here in the office to start getting work on. And I mean, I was always interested in these things. I was always a kid out there with the Estes rockets, but now I'm really getting into the nitty gritty judging by how much I've been rambling on in this incoherent rant. Now I want to do a video to try and simplify, Cold War missiles for dummies. And it wouldn't really be about the air-to-air missiles. That stuff's been covered. We all understand how that works. This would really be about the proposed anti-aircraft missiles and surface-to-surface missiles and why there were so many. And I guess technically you'd even have to include the Davy Crockett in that. But, man, if you're down to using the Davy Crockett, your back really is against the wall. First step in setting up your Davy Crockett, tactical nuclear weapon, dig a ditch for everybody to jump into. That way when the bomb goes off, the grave is pre-dug. But one of the things that comes out of this, a lot of money was getting poured into this, but it really did push the state of the art. And the Russians are doing the same thing. They were developing some very good, they still have some very good missiles. So it's one of those things that I used to find missiles kind of boring. Now they're just tubes that go to the sky. But the more I start reading it and read the capabilities some of these things had, or were trying to have, the goals they were going for. We want to be able to intercept the missile 200 miles out. And it started getting into radar deflection and all the problems with angular radar signals and accuracy. And the big thing that really modernized missilery, I think, because the propellants were already there and the airframes were there, it was the advances in electronics, particularly microelectronics. Because a lot of the reasons they couldn't do the things that they wanted to do were that the electronics were just too primitive. They were too big and too heavy. And when I think about what these missiles could do with the technology they had and how long some were in service, Lacrosse, because it was prone to getting jammed because you had to fly it to the target and it wasn't that hard to jam. But they said when it wasn't being jammed, with an operator knew what he's doing, it was extremely accurate because Lacrosse was made for a pinpoint target. But the Little John or the Honest John just point in the general direction and fire. The whole idea behind this, though, is that you want to be able to get steel on target. And when you're talking about anti-aircraft missiles or anti-ballistic missiles, we all know the speeds involved are in the thousands of miles an hour. And they were doing this with vacuum tubes. So my salute to them. I'll see if I can put something together. And we haven't even gotten into Lance, Pershing. There's just so many of them. And that's not even getting into the research stuff. Which used a lot of this. We learned so much so quickly. The information was just coming in as fast as we could toss them up. And these guys are doing this on slide rules and blueprint boards. And it really does make you appreciate how smart these people were and how dedicated. Fighting over what money should go where. We need more rockets. We need more bombers. In fact, at one point, I think General Shriver's Air Force Systems Command was controlling 40% of the Air Force budget. Had tens of thousands of people in it. And he was basically the big missile guy. But I was reading about him. He's an interesting guy, but apparently when he got his fourth star, I don't think there was any love lost between him and LeMay. And apparently when he got his fourth star, I guess LeMay was there, because if you want to believe what you read on Wikipedia, LeMay looked down at his fourth star, because LeMay, was a senior four star. It was up to me. You wouldn't be wearing that. I'm like, jeez, Kurt, Kurt's the perfect name for you. Okay. I wasn't there. I just read that on Wikipedia. I shouldn't be making jokes. Curtis LeMay was one of the people who built the Air Force. So I don't want to show any disrespect. But of course, then again, people who served in his Strategic Air Command said that once you went into SAC, they just stamped you property of SAC. The character General Hawks from Strategic Air Command was based on him. Why am I just rambling like this? Oh, good Lord, I really do love the sound of my own voice. Well, guys, I'll get working on these other rockets and missiles, and I did open them up and take a look at them, and the Honest John comes with a truck. That is so cool. I love it when they add those value-added features to models, whereas the Bloodhound comes with it does come with a launcher, and that's pretty cool. Oh, wow. I am proudly Captain Tangent. Guys, you take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you later. And as always, model on.